Okay, thank you everybody for joining. I had a little bit of a microphone difficulty there. I apologize for the delay. Thank you for joining. My name is Brad Young, and I'm going to be discussing today the subject of turning identity theft on its head. Okay, that is the title of the discussion that I'm going to be presenting today, and I really do want to emphasize the point that what I'm talking about here is not a incremental change in the way that we handle the issue of identity theft, but a fundamental change in the concept of who and where we take responsibility for issues of identity theft on our corporate networks and our corporate security environments. So during the course of this session, I want to encourage you, if you have any questions, feel free to type that into the questions box in the GoToWebinar panel on your screen. And as much as possible, I'll try to attend to the questions in the normal flow of the webinar. Where that's not possible, I will address the questions in a more formal Q&A session at the end. This webinar will take between 20 and 25 minutes to complete. So thanks for joining. And once again, my name is Brad Young. Let me give a real quick introduction before we get started into the heart of the matter of identity theft, to give you a background of what is Observit, where I'm coming from. Observit is a software product. We provide a software product that acts like a security camera on your servers. What it does is two key things. First of all, it performs a video recording of all user activity. And second of all, it performs an analysis of every user session in order to generate textual logs for every user action, including for apps and system utilities that have no internal logging. Okay. Our customers include some of the largest enterprises across many key business sectors, such as healthcare, financial, telecommunications, utilities, and manufacturing. Not surprisingly, that happens to be the business sectors where issues of security and regulatory compliance tend to be most sensitive, of course. Okay, so that's just a quick background about who is Observit, so you understand where I am coming from. Let's now talk about the matter that we all came together to discuss today, and that matter is clearly identity theft. And I'm not surprising you at all by making the very clear-cut statement: identity theft is a problem. Let's not pretend that it's not, and let's not make mincemeat over the issue. We all know that it's an issue, and if there is any doubt, of course, that's brought to light, and any doubt was cast away just by taking a look at the Verizon and United States Secret Service recent report, the 2001 Data Breach Investigations Report, in which they came in with some very interesting statistics. I want to point out a couple of them just to highlight how big the issues, of data breaches and identity theft really are. Okay. First of all, how are data breaches occurring? These are statistics that are coming from the Verizon and Secret Service report, and 45% are due to stolen login credentials. Okay, 45% of data breaches are due to stolen login credentials, and these breaches generally exist for weeks or months or even years before victims realize that they've been had. Okay, that's the first statistic I want to point out. Second statistic: why does it take months to discover? Let's just look at the fact that it is taking months to discover. That's the data breaches are occurring. Users are not even being aware of the fact that data breach is occurring. And one of the key reasons is that we are relying on system logs. We are relying on logs in order to detect identity theft, but there's something extremely wrong with our log analysis methodologies. Less than 5% of data breaches are discovered via log analysis. Less than 5%. That's despite all of the efforts that we put in to having smarter log analysis, smarter SIM correlations, smarter processes to cull knowledge and cull information and cull an understanding from these detailed technical system logs that we're capturing. It's just, despite all of that effort, it's just not doing the trick. which of course then raises the question, how are they being discovered? If we're not discovering via system logs, how are they being discovered? And here's really the shocking piece of the puzzle. 86% of data breaches are discovered externally by third parties. What do I mean by third parties? Well, it could be customers, it could be law enforcement, it could be fraud detection processes, it could be the press, or even WikiLeaks for that matter. Okay? The bottom line here is that we keep getting caught with our pants down. That's the issue here. We keep getting caught with our pants down. 86% of data breaches are being discovered by third parties. Okay. Now, when I was a kid, I remember my mother saying to me, sometimes we're here on a webinar and you can't really see who I am, so I'll allow myself a little bit of a physical explanation here. I'm not exactly your typical image of the big burly, brawny, bully type of guy. Okay, and yeah, so when I was a little kid, I was the nerdy guy who got picked on a little bit. And I remember my mother telling me, Brad, turn your weaknesses into strength. And that's what I want to talk about now. That's what I want to talk about now. The lesson I learned from my mother when I was a little kid, it's still true now. And I want to explore this concept of turning this weakness into a strength. I want to turn the issues of identity theft upside down. Okay? And in order to understand what it is that I'm talking about, let's take a look at the credit card industry. Okay? Clearly, the issues of fraud, the issues of detecting identity theft or credit card theft or credit card identities is a major concern within the industry. And even within that report that we were recently just talking about, the Verizon data breach report, certainly the credit card aspect of identity theft takes a major portion of that as well. Now, why do I bring up the credit card industry here? Well, the credit card industry has done something that we kind of have taken for, as consumers. We're all consumers, credit card users here, and so let's all put on our end user hats, if you will. As users, we've kind of all learned to take it for granted that we are part of the credit card industry's security mechanism. We didn't realize that we took on that responsibility, but we did take on that responsibility. What is it that I mean? Well, how is it that the credit card industry is succeeding in battling credit card theft? Of course, they have lots of problems still, and they're still fighting to get better and better and better. But without a doubt, the huge majority of how the credit card industry is detecting fraud is by having us, the consumers, identify it for them. And as technologists and as people in the technology industry, yeah, we like to believe that well, what's really happening is the credit card companies are getting really smart and implementing all sorts of artificial intelligence and automated software that detects a command from a charge from here and a charge from there and all sorts of things like that. And that's part of it. Yeah, they're doing that, but still, forgetting all that high-tech gizmos, the majority of their detection capabilities as it stands today relies on you and me as consumers, as credit card users. We alert the credit card companies of potential fraudulent activity. They use that information in order to perform correlations to determine what could be the cause of that fraud and to get to the root of that fraud. Okay? Cardholders' report of stolen credit cards is their #1 tool. Okay? What they've done is they've turned us into the front line in their security defenses. They've said, they kind of, in a way, put their hands up and said, you know, our security infrastructure is incapable, and I don't say that in a negative way at all. Our security infrastructure is incapable on its own of battling this huge issue. Let's employ all of those credit card users to be our scouts, to be our lead information gatherers, to alert us where we need to focus. Okay? That's revolutionary thinking, and we as consumers have all learned to take this for granted. And that's the beauty of it all. We do it, and we do it gladly. We know that we have to do it in order to protect our own credit history. Okay. Who else has learned this lesson? Well, Google and Facebook have learned this lesson also. Um, you ever log in to Google this? You might be aware of this type of message. You might have seen it in Gmail if you're a Gmail user. If not, I'll describe the scenario. If you ever log into Gmail and perhaps you leave it open on a computer and then you don't close it out. This happened to me. This is a very, very true case. It happened to me by accident. I was very happy that it happened to me though. I logged into Gmail on my work desktop. I forgot to log off. I went from my office to the airport, got on a plane, and flew to a business trip. That night I landed wherever I was landing, and I logged on to Gmail, of course, to check my Gmail. Google immediately identified that something was going on, and it asked me, as a Gmail user, to let them know, hey, is everything okay with what's going on? We noticed that this user named Brad has logged on from this office location in Israel, I happen to be speaking, and from Las Vegas, United States, where I had just landed. Okay, there was something suspicious about it, and Google asked me to perform the analysis of whether that's true. Facebook does something very similar as well. If I wanted to, if I were to delve down further into that issue, I would be immediately presented with more detailed information about exactly when I logged in and where, and I would then be able to correlate. I would be able to log out of certain sessions. I would be able to change my passwords, and if necessary, I would be able to also escalate the security incident. Okay, this is what I'm talking about again in terms of turning identity theft upside down, turning it on its head, and this is where Observit is stepping in. Okay, Observit in our upcoming release of Observit version 5.6, we are deploying a brand new addition to our identity management suite that is going to have a very clear-cut process that allows you to get all of your users on your network to be your scouts, your security scouts for you. So just like the credit card industry does it with their credit card users for credit card fraud, and just like Google and Facebook are doing it for user logins, you can do it also for your network user logins, the users within your domain, within your corporate network environment. You can control that. You can have that same type of control, very straightforward, very much out of the box, using Observit's identity management capabilities. Okay, so let me describe exactly how that works. For example, consider this email. This email. What occurred in this email, if I may explain? What we had is we had a user by the name of Ilan who, oops, excuse me, jump the screen. We had a user by the name of Ilan who logged in from a particular machine. We have set up rules that state that anytime a user logs in from a machine that he has not already been approved to log in from, send an email to that user. Send an email to the user that simply saying, hey, a user logged on from this machine. This user logged on from this machine, the user that you are responsible for. Please confirm, or please alert us if this is not true. So this is exactly what this email is about. The user got this particular email in which he's saying, hey, the user Elon logged in from this particular client machine. Here's some more details about what server he was logging into, when it occurred, etc. And then he's got two options. He can say, if this activity was not initiated by you, then click here. Click here to warn us. The security officers will then get a warning. On the other hand, if you want to avoid receiving notifications when you log in from Elon, click here, and then the security team can formally approve that pairing of this user to this client machine. That is what the Observit process is about. It's that much straightforward. Once that, if the user requests a pairing request, then the security team can then simply approve that, saying, well, you know what, this particular client machine in this particular domain for this particular user, I want to approve it forever, or I could approve it for some amount of time, whatever the case might be. It's just that simple to build up the set of rules of who is approved for what servers, excuse me, what clients and users are approved to have logins paired from one to the other. Okay. If, of course, there is an incident in which a user does not confirm and in fact denies responsibility for that login, saying, hey, this wasn't me, I got this email saying I logged in, but it wasn't me, then it's very straightforward to implement an incident handling procedure. User declines that a session was performed. You can have any set of rules that you might want to take as your security response to such a situation, and they would include, of course, things like resetting passwords, and furthermore, investigating what's going on in that culprit session by going to an immediate video review of what's taking place, what took place in that session, or even what's taking place in that live session, and then shutting down or locking that session in order to prevent anything else happening within that session. So it's a very straightforward response that Observe then gives you full control over how to immediately stop that user from doing anything if necessary. Okay. I kind of think about logs, about the issue of logs as needles in haystacks. It's an analogy that's way overused, the issue of finding needles in haystacks. Well, my approach or my viewpoint here is that the issue isn't about how to find needles within a haystack. The issue is about knowing which haystack to be looking in. The problem here is that there are hundreds and hundreds of haystacks. We're looking for, when we try to do the log analysis on our own, we being system administrators or security officers, when we try finding this identity theft incidents on our own, it's like we're looking for that needle within a haystack when there are 500 haystacks in our field. Okay, this Observe It platform gives you a great capability of eliminating where most of the noise are and letting you focus specifically on where there is potentially a problem. And then once you're at that particular location of the problem, it's much easier to investigate it in more depth. Okay. By doing so, what we're doing is we're essentially setting up rules that's going to find faulty transactions. It's not necessarily going to find who is the culprit, but it's going to find the faulty transactions, okay? Which 95% of the time, as was highlighted by the Verizon data breach report, 95% of the time we're not successfully finding the faulty transactions on our own. So what Observe It does is that it lets us find the sessions that are faulty or that are suspect, and then we can very easily investigate that session to find what is faulty about them. And that is really, I think what I really want to wrap it up as is that I'm begging you, bequeathing you to really take a new look at the way you achieve identity theft detection, action, and even prevention. Okay, you can achieve it. You can achieve much, much better results, shockingly better results, order of magnitude better results, not just incrementally better results, by turning the entire issue on its head. Turning it on its head and saying, instead of trying to be the hero, instead of trying to put the world on my shoulders as a security officer, let us instead empower the field to be able to detect identity theft. After all, I mean, it's your users, it's really your users who are best able to identify whether they performed an action or not. You're much less qualified to know if user X performed an action on server Y. User X is much more qualified to know whether he performed that action or not. Let him be, or her be, the front line for you in achieving and knowing who did what and who is not responsible for things going on within their user ID. By shifting that responsibility to the users, by incorporating users into your security infrastructure, you've all of a sudden turned yourselves from an army of one into an army of thousands. And that's really the point that I want to conclude on right now. turn yourself from an army of one to an army of thousands. All of a sudden, the identity theft, it turns your weakness into a strength, just like my mom taught me. So at this point, I'm going to wrap it up. I do thank everybody who's spent the time with me today in this webinar. I'll give you one last chance to feel free to ping me with any questions. And also on the screen right now, I've got my email up, so you can feel free to ping me offline as well at Brad, B-R-A-D, at observeit.com. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have offline as well. So yes, once again, thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of the morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you might be logging in from today. Take care, everybody. Thanks a lot.